My name is Ray Brown. I served in the Air Corps during World War II. I'm 99 years old and very, very proud of the service that was held. I joined the Air Force in Columbus, or in Dayton, Ohio, at Wright-Patterson Field in September of 1942. I joined the Air Force because I knew sooner or later I was going to get drafted and preferred the Air Force over other branches of service. Unfortunately, or fortunately, during one of my weaker moments, I volunteered to be an aerial gunner. Forgot all about it. My history with the Air Force was all ATC, cargo planes, or paratrooper planes. I went to school in Gulfport, Mississippi, basically studying the C-47. After completing that, I went to the Douglas factory, where basically what happened, when you graduated from there, you left with an airplane, a C-47, to be assigned to either the Air Transport Command or to a paratrooper group. Unbeknownst and forgotten about being there, signing up for aerial gunnery school, I went through all that thinking that when I came out of Long Beach, Douglas, I would be on a C-47 until after I graduated from C-47 school, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're going to aerial gunnery school." It was an experience training as a aerial gunner. A lot of fun, a lot of shooting, all kinds of movable targetry, from the back of a pickup truck to AT-6 airplanes shooting at a target pulled by I don't know who pulled them, probably BT-18s or something. Got shipped back to Salt Lake City for reassignment, as did our whole crew. And I wound up again on a second stage crew in Boise, Idaho. And that's the crew I went overseas with. Better known as a multinational crew. We had guys on there that were from every nation, I think, known to man. We had a 10-man crew. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and bombardier. We had two radio operators and two I can't even think of what I did.
Flight engineer?
Have two flight engineers. The other flight engineer was a senior flight engineer because he had gone to B-24 school. I didn't go to B-24 school. I went to C-47 school. So everything I learned about the B-24, I learned on the B-24. In those days, we did not have aircraft that could make it across the ocean fuel-wise. So you went one of two ways. If you were going to England, you went the north route. If you were going to Italy, you went the south route. So we left Fort Lauderdale, and if I recall correctly, I'm trying to think now, we went to Trinidad. From Trinidad, it's got to be Natal, Belém, or Belém, Natal, South America.
Because you were saying sent to Italy, obviously.
Yeah, and then you go across to, at that time it was called Southwest Africa. And you always flew at night, primarily because it was a training flight for the navigator. And I'm sure the Germans had some type of people counting the airplanes going over, so they didn't have a chance at night to count them. One night we took off going to Southwest Africa. In Southwest Africa, we stayed a day or two and flew from there to Tunis, where in Tunis is actually a place that you staged for replacement crews. As I understand it, each bomb group each day would report how many aircraft they lost. And as we're sitting there, whoever was in charge of it designated this aircraft to go to this field, and you were a replacement for the unfortunates that got shot down that day or the day before. And we were assigned to the 454th Bomb Group, the 737th Bomb Squadron, stationed at a town called Cerinola, Italy. Everybody had a turret. The flight engineer usually had a turret that was above the co-pilot and pilot in case something minor happened. But you always have a guy 6 foot on the crew who can't fit in a turret. So he gets the top turret. I wound up, which was a pretty good deal, in the nose of the airplane, as a nose gunner. I made my first mission, I believe, either on D-Day, which was the 6th of June of 44, or the day before. And we made what turned about, as they referred to them, a milk run to South France as a diversion, because the big deal was everybody was flying out of England into Germany. So it was a diversional. Our first mission was around the first week in June. Got shut down on July 7th. So we're only in combat about 40 days. And normally what you flew was every third day. So I could have had 13 missions. On July 7th was a beautiful day in the country. We were going to a town, as they referred to it as Obertal, which is over on the Polish border. We were going for a refinery. It was beautiful all the way there. It was beautiful over the target. Now, that day, instead of flying with 10 men as a crew, we had 11. We had a official photographer with us who would, being that we were on the end of the group, he could take pictures of what the earlier group had done. His name was Bofel. First time I met him and the last time I met him. We got over the target. We got the bombs away. Now, when you go on a mission that's that long, you have fighter escort so far. Then you have a change of escort that takes you over the target. Then you have an escort who brings you home. Now, if the escort, for some reason, doesn't get there at the change, you're in for a hell of a battle. And on the way home, the change of escort between 2 and 3, I believe they report it was like 3 minutes. And we got hit with ME-109s like you can't believe. I can't tell you how many airplanes there were. I know one went by me like this, and that guy had guts to get in there because, well, he got us. I don't know how many other guys he got, but now you can imagine with that tracers going like this, he tore that airplane up pretty good. And the first thing he tore up was the intercom. So there's no communication with anybody. I turned it, I wanted to see, well, because he went through on the left side of me. I turned that way, and I looked back, and number 2's on fire. Number 2 engine's on fire. And you can't communicate with anybody. I figure I better get the hell out of there. So to get out of the nose, you got to get the turret straight, open the doors, and then crawl through a space, where you can crawl through to get up on the flight deck. First you got to get into Bombay, then up on the flight deck. And then you're on oxygen. And our estimated height at that time, it was about 25,000 feet. Now we got the Bombay doors open, and I go up on the flight deck. The pilot and co-pilot are still there. The bombardier had jumped out. The navigator is up there. I look in the back and everybody's gone in the back. The 4 in the back, there's actually 5, but 4 in the back, the 2 waist gunners, the photographer and the tail gunner, they're gone. And I'm screaming at the pilot, he can't hear you, you know. And he's going like this, get out. Okay, I jump, Buzzy jumps right behind me. And that was the last we saw of airplane, pilot, and Diamond. You're figuring that airplane's going probably about 250 miles an hour. So I jump and you jump behind me. You're going to be some distance behind him. But I can see him, and he's up there, I'm down here. But pretty soon he's down there because he was heavier than I was. And I don't see any more parachutes. I don't hear the airplane crashing. Nah. Somebody said, how long did it take you to pull the ripcord? Not very long. Now you got to remember, it's a beautiful day. There's a cloud in the sky, and everybody on the ground is watching you come down. You find these things out later, but you don't know them at the time because you talk to guys in POW camp who went through the experience, and now you can relate to them. And I didn't know at the time, but I found out later. The worst thing that can happen to you when you hit the ground is that the wind is blowing and that you can't get that parachute down, and it'll drag you. It'll drag you all over hell's creation. And when you're getting dragged over there, there's about as many as they can gather Hungarian women who are after you. They want that parachute. Your parents or your grandparents could tell you about in this country during World War II, there were shortages. There were shortages of everything. But there were also shortages there. And one of them was nylon and silk. And they wanted them parachutes. And they didn't care how they got them. But I was very fortunate. It was a day that there wasn't any wind. I could see people running toward me. I knew it was all over. I landed in a field, and you're not going to believe this. There's a guy in a tractor. He's got a shotgun or a rifle, I don't know what the hell he had. He said, in perfect English, "For you, the war is over." I said, "You speak English?" "Yeah, I worked for Ford in Detroit for 6 years." He went back over and got caught. And And by that time, I was fortunate enough that I would guess you would call it like a militia, came or were there. And of course, they're going to display that they caught this guy. And they put you in a wagon, took you to a little town. I don't know how big the town was, but they had a jail. And threw you in jail. And they had like one cell. It wasn't this big, but half the size. And the Luftwaffe had a great day that day. They must have shot down 10 airplanes. There was that many guys and this guy said in English, "We'll protect you from the civilians." Because they're outside going like this, and that was a terrible night. And he said, basically, tomorrow we'll take you to Budapest, and you'll be you'll be interrogated in Budapest. Now, don't try to escape on the train, because we got no time for that. If you try to escape, we'll shoot you. Okay. So the next morning, we get up. I say, get up. We were laying there in that cell, and they come and they get us. I can't remember how we got to the train station. I know we didn't walk there. So we had some type of transportation. And they put probably 20 guys. And they put a section where everybody sat. And they had guards all around there. And we went to Budapest. We got off the train in Budapest. It was a passenger train. And we got off the train in Budapest. We had a lot of guards. And they marched us to the jail, which was, in all intents and purposes, I have pictures of it, was a federal penitentiary. It was, anybody can remember the old James Cagney movies, where open courtyard and walkways around. It was jail. So I am by myself now because they're putting guys off on each floor. And I get to this floor, the guard takes me, puts me in this cell. It wasn't completely, it had a little light in it, had a window about that big, so there was sight in there. It's hard to distinguish. And so I get in there, and I know there's somebody else in there. Well, this is hard to believe. But my pilot and co-pilot were in there. So it was like old times. We were there about 3 days when they came and got both of them. They were going to an officers' camp. We were sergeants. We were going to a sergeant's camp, or I was. Okay, so the 3 days you were there, the 15th Air Force bombed Budapest twice. And it's a terrible experience being in a locked up cell. And the airplanes are going over dropping bombs. There's no bomb shelters. So, anyway, I was there probably 2 more days by myself. Now I'm all by myself. And so a guard comes and gets me. I'm going to be interviewed by the Luftwaffe. Well, the Luftwaffe were gentlemen compared to, well, we never had anything to do with the SS, but those were the bad guys. So I go down to get interviewed, and I go into a nice room. There's a German officer there from the Luftwaffe. I found out later he was a fighter pilot who had got hit and had his arm was immobile. So he was doing the interviewing. And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, Sergeant, all I need from you, what bomb group you're from and what bomb squadron you're from. And I know more about that bomb group and bomb squadron than you do. Remember, I interviewed your pilot and your co-pilot, and they're gone already. So they must have told me what I wanted to know. Now, I have a group leaving for a Stalag tonight. You tell me what I want to know, and you'll be on that train. Otherwise, you'll go back in that cell until I call you again. So what do you want to know? Bomb group. He said, I'll tell you, I'll make it real easy for you. 450. I said, 4. 730. 7. Oh, in the meantime, he's got a nice desk with American cigarettes on it. Now, how you get American cigarettes, I don't know. But he had them. And I wasn't a smoker, so I was very happy. That night, they would move us to the railroad station. And they put us, well, you've all seen pictures on TV or something of, we ran on a passenger train with a freight car on the back, and we were in the freight car. There was probably 20 of us. The trip from Budapest to where the town was took 6 days in that. And the only decent thing we had to eat there was Red Cross in Vienna. And of course you get to Vienna and you're always, the heavy bombers always bombed between 11 and 1 in the afternoon. That was their schedule. But making a long story short, we got to the railroad station on a Sunday afternoon. And that was the luckiest thing that ever happened to us, because we were escorted, just walking from the railroad station to the PW camp. And we were interned there. Now, normally what happened on weekdays, they had a sergeant of the guard who had lost, I don't know, his family or something to bombs. And he had, as his group, 16, 17, 18-year-old who would make you run. He was on a horse. And normally he had these guys handcuffed together. And if you couldn't keep up, we saw, like the next day and the day after, they would jab you. And we had guys that had just numerous stabs in the back and the buttocks and the legs. And that was our introduction to Stalag Luft 4. A typical day in the Stalag was very dull. You didn't have to work. A Stalag was made up of 4 compounds so that you couldn't assemble 9,000 guys. And they had 10 barracks in a lager, 10 rooms in a barracks, 20 guys or more in a room. And so you had 2,000 guys here, 2,000 guys there, and 3 were made up of Americans. 1 was made up of Canadians and a few English, a few Russians. They made the Russians work. So they did the dirty work around there. But basically, you could live like a king. You didn't have to work. The only problem was no food. That's what I'll tell you about it. In the morning, your breakfast was a pail of coffee. Now, any similarity between our coffee and that coffee was strictly accidental. And you also got 1/5 of a loaf of bread, which amounts to about 2 slices. That's breakfast. For lunch, 1 water pail, a soup, primarily kohlrabi, cabbage. Once in a great while, you got barley, which was like heaven. I can't think of what else kind of soup we had. For supper, 1 bale of potatoes. Now, if you had got an extra guy in, 21 in the room, still got 1 pail of potatoes. I will say this. I never saw an argument. I never saw a fight. I never saw any disagreement of the way it was dished out. Everybody got the same. And now, what you got also, the way it was designed, you got a Red Cross parcel a week. This was put up by the by the Air Force or the Air, and shipped through the Red Cross. Now, Jerry was smart enough. The Germans weren't dumb. They're not going to let you get one parcel that you could store and maybe try to escape. So you got one part of that parcel every day. Now, the most I ever got was 4 guys on a parcel. So what the bastards would do, like on a Friday, after you had your supper, and you were pretty well fixed for the night because you had the potatoes, they come around and grant 1 can of salmon on a Friday night. But they also punch a hole in it. So you had to eat it. And there's 4 guys. What would you get, a tablespoon of? Now, in a Red Cross parcel, if you could have got a Red Cross parcel a week, you would have lived like a king. You wouldn't have lost a pound. There was in a American Red Cross parcel, and I tried to remember, there was a can of margarine. If you got a Canadian parcel, you got a can of butter. You got about 6, about that big, of cheese. But most of the cheese, by the time it got there, was, it had to be cut because it was, what the heck you call it? I can't think of the name. You had what they called a D-bar, which was a concentrated chocolate bar. And there was other stuff in there, but you could have lived real good. But now you're 1/4 of that, you know. And I was full twice, and not only me, but everybody was full twice while we were in prison camp. Once at Thanksgiving and once at Christmas, because we got a full parcel made up for Christmas, and it was canned turkey, cranberries, all that. And you know, you can't save it. The big thing in the POW camp was cards. No gambling, because you had nothing to gamble, like food. That was out. So the big game in a POW camp or in Stalag 4 was bridge. Some of the best bridge players in the world came out of there. Somewhere in that camp, somebody had a radio. It had to be the English, because, you know, some of the English had been POWs for 4 years and 5 years. They got caught right after 41, 42. They're sharp. The Germans, individuals now, they had older men walking around through these, trying to learn anything they could learn. They could all speak English. They could understand English, but they never let on. But you always got a guy in one of these rooms that can speak German. So he's the other thing about the German, he liked the cigarettes. So what you did, we never got involved in this. We understand later happened was this. You get a German coming in there every day, and they offer him a cigarette. He's going to be in there every day because he wants a cigarette. And the English were smart. Somewhere along the line, they got a guy, and they said, "Hey, Landsman, I like a pipe. Get me a pipe, I give you 5 packs of cigarettes." He can't kill for 5 packs of cigarettes. Once they got the pipe, they got him. And it's been written up that what they did, they just asked for a part of a crystal set. They didn't want anything to transmit. All they want was a receiver. During the summer when Patton was going crazy over there and going 20 miles a day, a guy would come around and he'd say, "The English bombed such and such last night. The Americans yesterday they bombed Berlin. Patton went 18 miles today." You knew it had to come from somewhere. And the guy who read this to you had a guy at each end of the barracks. Nobody knows where they got it, how they got it. I can't tell you how they got it, but they got it. So along about December, the word came down. Now you got to remember, a lot of guys during the winter, the only exercise you got was walking around this compound. And there wasn't too much walking done. But Jerry was smart enough to know that once you started to walk, something was up. And the word came down, don't all do it at the same day, but start walking because you're going to walk out of here. The Russians are coming, and the Germans are deathly afraid of the Russians. We left the last week in January, supposedly going to walk for 3 days. It's cold. You and I are together. So the first thing we do, we sleep together. We sleep with our clothes on, and we sleep with overcoats on, because the Army had sent overcoats in. So the only thing you take off is your shoes. And you sleep in barns. You come to Munster, there's 20 barns, 50 guys in each barn. You're sleeping in hay. The first thing you're going to get is lice. And I'm sure you never had lice, but they can bite like heck. And you had lice from 4 days out, for 86 days. And they get in your shirt. They get in your pants. It just chew the devil out of you. And of course, we're lucky. We had been shot for typhoid and all that. So they never had we never had a disease. We made 605 miles. We know that the war is pretty much come to an end because the fighter planes are all around us. The light bombers, the heavies are not out anymore, and the lights are, we're in Munster, they're bombing Griffith, you know what I mean? So they got anything more to bomb. So we know that it's pretty near over. And so one night, a guy says, I think we're going to get liberated. And a guy says, I've been hearing that for a couple of days now. And they said, no, I saw last night there was a Jeep in here, and there were some officers. He said, I think we'll get liberated. And so we take off that day, and we walk through Munster, and I got white flags out. So we know we're pretty near home. By the time we get to Griffith, we're met by the 104th Infantry Division out of Colorado. And they liberated us. And so now they're there telling you, don't go around trying to get food. You know, we don't want you trying to get sick. Oh shit, that's the first thing they do, you know. The funniest thing I saw, I was part of it. We met some guys. We're in a town about the size of Munster. And we met some guys and said, hey, that guy, we haven't shaved. We haven't had a bath in 86 days. We're full of lice. You know, the guy said, there's a high school down the road. You got a pool, they're swimming in it. Oh, we got to get over there. We got there, the scum's about that high on the water. But that happened the first night. But what they did, the next morning, they put you through those tents and deloused you and gave you all new clothes. They did that for 3 days. Now, 3 days, you've been eating pretty good. Where's the booze? I talked to some guys, and of course the MPs are trying to help you. You need anything, you want anything? How we get out of here? As soon as you get your belly full, they want adventure. They had camps along in France, named after cigarettes. Chesterfield, Camel, Lucky Strike. And what they were jumping off places to get home. But the problem was they're still fighting in Japan and they wanted to get those soldiers who had little experience in Europe back home and back to have more soldiers. So it almost got. I think I was there for 30 days trying to get home. And now the guys who were sick, they were home within a week. But finally, Eisenhower came there. And he said, we're trying to fight a war in the Pacific. Are you guys willing to sleep on the decks of the ships? We'll give you a sleeping bag. You don't have to work. You don't have to do KP, anything like that. Just, sure. We got out there within about a week, But went to Newport News. That's where we landed. We were on a train to Chicago that night. Went to Fort Sheridan, where they wanted to get all your records and all that stuff. And they wanted to pay you some money. So you had some money. And they wanted to know, you had your choice of going 3 places. After, you got a 90-day furlough. And you could go to Atlantic City, Long Beach, or, Miami. And so most of the guys in the Midwest went to Miami. Were there for 90 days. Then they let you go anywhere in the country you wanted to go. Of course, most of the guys wanted to go to Chinook Field down here at Champaign, And you did nothing. And all they were trying to do is work to get you out of service. Eisenhower made a statement when he went through, like the Holocaust, where, we saw a lot of people going to Auschwitz and all those places. He said, take pictures, take pictures, take pictures, because 50 years from now, nobody will believe this. And what you're doing, there's probably some kid in high school saying, bullshit, I don't believe that. So I think what you're doing is, really there aren't too many people who care what happened. It didn't affect them. It don't affect them now. But going out to Joliet, to that cemetery.
Lincoln National Cemetery.
Lincoln National. They bury one every 15 minutes. So, hey, that's my story.